Hi, welcome to what a lot of people call Throwback Thursday, and we're calling it that here too. I wanted to have a day where I talked about books that I love that I think are not in rotation as much as they should be. We're always reading brand new books. There's so many books that come out. There's so many books that have been written. And I just wanted to highlight books that I love or books that I find that are older that they need some more love. So for our very first one, I'm going with one of my very favorite series as a kid that I like to go back and reread every now and then. I don't always start from the very beginning. I pick and choose my favorite parts of my favorite books to read, but they're always a comfort to me, and I try to give them to people when they come into the library and they're looking for a good read aloud for their kids. They've just finished the Little House on the Prairie books or something, and they're looking for something along those lines to read out loud with their kids. So I like to give them Betsy-Tacy, which is the very first book in the Betsy-Tacy series by Maud Hart Lovelace. These books came out in the 1940s. They're set before then in the same way that Little House books are semi-autobiographical. The Betsy-Tacy books are semi-autobiographical as well. Betsy is based loosely on Maud Hart Lovelace. She's a young girl who's really imaginative. Even at a young age, she wants to be a writer, and her imagination gets away with her. She lives on the top of a big hill on a street called Hill Street in Minnesota. And there are a lot of kids who live on Hill Street, but there are no kids who are Betsy's age, no little girls who are Betsy's age. But there's an empty house across the street, and she really hopes when the new family moves into it that they'll have a little girl who will be Betsy's age. And luckily they do. A big Irish family moves in, and they have a girl who is Betsy's age, and her name is Anastasia, but she goes by Tacy. Betsy and Tacy hit it off right away. They become best friends. They hang out so often that people stop calling them Betsy and Tacy, and they just call them Betsy-Tacy. One word. If you are a big fan of the movie You've Got Mail, then you've heard this book mentioned before, even if you've never really thought of it. Meg Ryan's character is book talking this series to Joe Fox's aunt, the little girl he brings in, and she tells her about Betsy and Tacy and their friend that they meet at the end of the first book, and then she's mentioned in the title of the second book, whose nickname is Tib, because unfortunately her real name is Thelma. Betsy, Tacy, and Tib get up to the same sort of antics. They cut locks of each other's hair. They go on long walks. They get into trouble. They're wonderful. They start school together. They go over the big hill. They get into more trouble. They go downtown. And then they stop. The series stops. They're nice short books that are great for reading out loud to younger kids. But then they stop. Then they start up again when Betsy starts her first year of high school with Heaven to Betsy. And Betsy has grown up. She thinks that she's getting more mature and she's trying to act more worldly. These are still this is the early 1900s. But it's really universal, I think. So that was Heaven to Betsy, freshman year. Betsy in Spite of Herself, sophomore year, when Betsy tries to make herself even more sophisticated and grown up, and she starts spelling her name with an extra E, B-E-T-S-E-Y, to make herself mysterious and alluring. And she can't help it. As much as she tries to be aloof and alluring, she's still Betsy, and she's just charming and vivacious and in love with life, basically. Then Betsy was a junior, more good stuff. Then Betsy and Joe. Betsy and Joe is senior year of high school. Joe Willard has been a character throughout Betsy's high school career. He is a friend, but sometimes an antagonist. He is the other smartest person in school. She's the smartest girl. He's the smartest guy. They're always going up against each other for top prizes and top grades. She likes him, but he is like working his way through school, and he doesn't have time to run off and be frivolous and party and things like that with all the other kids. So Betsy dates other boys, but she always kind of has Joe in the back of her mind. Senior year, they finally get their acts together and they start going steady. Love Joe. Then, this is the best one. Betsy goes off to college. College is not an ideal place for Betsy. She still wants to be a writer, but she gets caught up in the social whirl of things. Joe goes off to school on the East Coast, and she stays in the Midwest. And her studies kind of fall by the wayside. Then she gets I think she gets sick, and she decides that she doesn't want to continue going to college. But her father and her mother decide that she still needs an education of some sort, so she's going to get a worldly education, so they send her on a tour of Europe. This is the book, you guys. Do not judge this book by this cover. I hate the cover of this edition. She looks so dowdy, and she's got like fishnet stockings, which Betsy would never wear fishnet stockings. I don't understand what they were thinking here. The illustrations inside are much, much better. I've put some up so you can see. But Betsy goes on her own and she travels around Europe. She goes to Germany and Austria and France and England. And this book, I first read this one when I was in middle school or junior high. My mom had read the younger ones to me when I was younger, and then I took up reading these when I got a little older on my own. And I think Betsy was like a really big inspiration to me. This book ends at the outbreak of World War I, so in the 19-teens. And Betsy is a young woman in a time that young women didn't really travel by themselves, and for the most part she's going around unchaperoned. And I think she was a big hero to me. Like, just subconsciously, I don't think I recognized that, oh, this is what I would aspire to be. But I think she made a big impact on my life. I love to travel, and just recently, last year in November, I traveled on my own for the first time, like to go on a trip completely by myself. I went to Iceland and stayed for a week in Iceland, and it was an amazing experience. You learn a lot about yourself and about what you're able to do on your own. Betsy goes through a lot of things that she didn't think she could handle. She spends a lot of time in Germany, where she speaks barely any English, or barely any German, rather. She knows how to say Spinat mit Ei, which means spinach with egg, and that's really not a diet you want to subsist on for like months in Germany. So she copes with homesickness, and she sees wonderful things, and she comes back more the mature person that she always wanted to be in high school. And yes, this book, you guys, this is the one I go back to. And then the very last book in the series, Betsy Comes Home, and it's called Betsy's Wedding. I bet you can guess what it's about. Betsy gets married, and I bet you can't guess to whom she gets married. I won't tell you if you can't guess from what I've already told you. You'll just have to read the books to find out. They're wonderful books. They're charming is the best word for them, I think. They read aloud really well. They hold up really well. The Bechdel test, this book passes the Bechdel test with flying colors. Women are the majority of the main characters. The books are named after a woman and her best friend, and they spend all their time together, and they talk about boys, but they also talk about all the other things that are going on in their lives, their motivations. Betsy especially has lots of ambition, and she wants to be a writer, and she tries really hard to be a published writer from a very young age. And I really appreciate also that Joe, her, romantic interest, he's also very ambitious, and he wants to be a writer as well, and he supports her and he challenges her, which I think is a really important thing in any good relationship, and any relationship I think that reflects well in literature. Since it is semi-autobiographical, it's fun to know Maud Hart Lovelace based Betsy on herself, and Joe is based on her husband, whose name escapes me right now. It's kind of weird though, but he actually wrote King Kong, or he wrote the movie adaptation of it, which is really cool. And I'm sorry that I don't remember his name, but I will put it down below, or Lisa will put it under the screen, so while I'm saying this, you're actually learning his real name. You can also, oh my gosh, this is so cool. You can go visit Betsy's house in Minnesota, in the town where Maud Hart Lovelace grew up, which is called Mankato, M-A-N-K-A-T-O. You can go and visit Betsy's house, Tacy's house, Carney's house. She's a character. You can go to a bunch of the places in the book, which is really cool. When I was up in Minnesota a couple of years ago, we were like 2 hours away from Mankato, and we didn't go, and I'm so upset about it. The illustrations, remember what I said, do not judge them by the covers. The illustrations are amazing. The first books are illustrated by Lois Lenski, and if you don't know who she is, we're putting up some pictures right now so you can see. I always talk about if I had like a sleeve of tattoos on my arm, they would either be Edward Gorey's illustrations from the beginning of Masterpiece Mystery, or they would be Lois Linsky and the rest of the illustrations from the Betsy-Tacy books. Just, they're beautiful and they remind me of my childhood and they're just very important to me. But yes, Betsy-Tacy by Maud Hart Lovelace. I 100% recommend you read these. It's my very first Throwback Thursday. Thank you for watching yet again. Do all those nice things you can do on YouTube. Like this video, share it, comment on it below. If you've read Betsy-Tacy before, let me know if you agree with me that they're the best. If you haven't, please go read those as soon as possible, then come back and comment on this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. You can follow me on Twitter at friendswithya, and you can follow me on Tumblr at Reading Rainbow Hair. I will put all the links down below. See you next time.